My guest today is Jason Su Hoy, CEO of Supercast, a podcast subscription platform powering millions in revenue for independent podcasters and content networks. Welcome, Jason.
Thanks for having me, Jen.
Sure. So the first thing I ask, very unusual, I know for you probably, is I'm going to ask you to tell us who Jason is.
Oh, that. How long have we got? Look, I think I'll start by saying that I was born in New Zealand. Given that most people will be, trying to figure out probably where this accent comes from. So
yeah,
I'll give it to you straight off the bat. It is from New Zealand. And so I was born and bred there. And I come from a long, just to give you a little bit of context into my family before we, dig into all things technical, come from a long history, a long lineage, of kind of like family history. So, my great-great-grandfather, the way, we ended up in New Zealand is that he was from China, and he went out to find his fortune in the world with the gold rushes of the late 1800s. So, he went from China to San Francisco to Australia, and then, eventually settled in New Zealand. This, again, was late 1800s. So my family has been in New Zealand for, well over 140 years now. So I'm fifth generation Kiwi Chinese is the way I like to term it. But now I live in the US, in Texas.
Okay.
So I myself, kind of like I almost did the reverse journey. I went from New Zealand to Australia to the US, and the gold rush of, my time isn't actual physical gold. It's more, like technology. And obviously that is the bulk of where I've spent my career, is actually in building tools for creators. So I worked as an early executive, an early employee at a company called 99 Designs, which is a global marketplace for graphic design. And so I spent 10 years there, basically helping designers find work, where they could do, basically work on projects, logos, t-shirts, car wrap designs, banner designs, anything that you would normally go to a graphic designer for.
Yes.
They could find clients for on 99 Designs as a platform. So we had, millions of designers from all over the world. We had hundreds of thousands of design projects completed, just sort of a wonderful business there. So I was very privileged to be able to be in the right place at the right time and really, go from a bootstrap startup to something that was venture funded, eventually kind of moving over here to the US because most of our customers were here. And then that business, ultimately being acquired by Vistaprint a couple of years ago. And now I work for a different kind of creator. So, like my kind of the common thread in my technology career has been helping creators get paid. And so now I'm doing it as the CEO and co-founder of a company called Supercast, which is a podcast subscription platform. So what we do now is we help podcasters that have established audiences basically offer the top 5% of their audience, top 10% of audience, their 1,000 true fans, or however many it might be, a premium experience where they can pay $5, $10, $15 a month in return for premium content that goes over and above what they're already getting for free.
Right.
So yeah, that's me in a nutshell.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And that's a big nutshell, and I'm sure it's bigger, but thank you for sharing and for even sharing your personal story. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Sure. Okay. So I remember 99 Design. I've used the platform. And
great.
Now yeah, sure. It was very good. And now you're working on helping podcasters create content for those special people in their audience. A bit of a Patreon, would you say?
That's right. So we actually, Patreon, is an amazing business. Like they kind of pioneered this model for all kinds of creators. And, really this idea that you could pay a monthly subscription and get bonus stuff, like they just were visionaries at the time, Jack Conte and, Sam Yang, I love everything that they've done. But actually the way we discovered this opportunity for podcasting was Sam Harris, the philosopher, neuroscientist, very, very popular, had a very big Patreon, but it wasn't working as well as he would hoped. He had plenty of people, that had subscribed to his the premium version of his podcast for Making Sense. They'd signed up to his Patreon, but it was too many steps, it was too high friction, and people, his listeners were going from like, hey, here I am listening to the podcast, and then I want to go get more content. And then somehow I end up having to create a new account on this thing called Patreon. And I'm on this wall that kind of looks a little bit like Facebook. And they're like, what happened to listening?
Yeah.
And so Sam approached the founding team of Supercast before we had built Supercast. And he basically said, I would like you to build me out a subscription platform just for my podcast that is as a few steps as possible and really, gets people back to like listening in the podcast player that they already use. And so we built that solution for him, and then we launched it with him, and it launched to enormous success. The listeners loved it. It was so much cleaner an experience. And, we were meeting listeners where they are, which is, kind of like podcast player they already know and love, whether it's Apple or Google Podcasts or Pocket Casts. There's so many podcast players. So it's just important to like give people the familiarity of what they already use.
Yeah.
And so that it was at that point where we were like, wow, this seems incredible. Like it seems like so many podcasters out there have done the hard work of building the audience. And yet, subscription is so obvious, and it doesn't seem like many people have discovered this yet. Kind of like, gold sitting underneath, kind of like a farmer's field, And so what we did was we approached a few other podcasters, Sam Harris and Peter Attia and Rhonda Patrick, and they had big audiences in the health and kind of longevity space, and we tried it with them, and sure enough, their premium subscriptions and their audiences took off as well. So it was at that point that we realized, okay, there is something in this model, that we've unlocked specifically for podcasters. We to this day we focus exclusively on podcasters, and so we built out Supercast as a platform that really just streamlines that experience of help people understand what you offer, how much it costs. You can use Apple Pay or Google Pay to, quickly just, scan your face and pay. And then on the very next screen, it's like, okay, where do we load your premium version of the podcast? Apple, Spotify, Google, all the buttons are there. And it's just like one more tap for you to basically add the extra content to your podcast player of choice.
Yes, it makes sense. I mean, and it goes to show one that not when everybody's doing it, they're not necessarily doing it for everyone, right? So you found a flaw in the system that's already existing, and you created something for podcasters specifically. So that's good. And number two, if you have all these people following you, you don't want them to be clawing their way to reach your content, especially when they're paying. So yeah, that sounds like an amazing platform.
And again, Patreon, they have such a wide audience. They're trying to do it for all creators, which is great. It just means that it's tough for them to specialize. I think podcasters are about 15% of their overall creator base, so they can't, it's hard to kind of like create specialized flows for like all the different, kinds of creator, from like comics to writers to podcasters to YouTubers. But by taking a narrow focus, we can create, just a really streamlined experience for both the podcaster and the listener.
Right. Okay. Thank you. So, now that you're serving podcasters, can you tell us how podcasters can build a profitable business around their content?
Yeah. So, there's, I guess we break it down in a few different steps when we think about, how to create a good premium program. And so the first step is, what would you offer to, the people in terms of like the premium perks or the benefits? And so in that bucket, I would separate it into two parts. One is like the kind of repackaging your existing content, which is kind of the easier stuff, and then creating bonus content, which obviously, takes a bit more effort. So when it comes to repackaging existing content, the typical things that are offered as perks are like ad-free listings. So if you're running ads on your platform, great, you've got some, revenue coming in, from the ads. But typically when you reach a certain point, repeat listeners, would happily pay a little bit to support you, but then also to not have to listen to those ads. So ads and subscriptions work, really well together in that regard. You can kind of like monetize the free part of the audience, with ads, and then the premium version, the premium audience, you can monetize at a lot higher rate, like by taking out the ads for them. So that's a really easy thing to do. Restricting access to the back catalog. So if you've got, hundreds of episodes, maybe what you do is after 6 months, you take them off the free feed and you only make them available on the premium feed. Extended interviews. So an interview like this, we might talk about, something, and maybe, the section where I talk about, the highest converting perks, or, like something like that. You pull that out and you say, oh, and right. When it gets on the free episode, when it gets to that section, you say, oh, to listen to this next section where Jason talks about, the highest converting perks, you have to become a premium member of the Tools of the Podcast Trade podcast. And then, click the link in the show notes to go and sign up. So right. Extended interviews is another kind of thing that, again, it's not entirely new interviews that you have to do. It's just, being clever right. With the content that you're already creating. And then just things like early access too. Again, it's not more episodes, but your premium subscribers might value getting episodes a few hours early or even a few weeks early. So we've certainly got podcasters that make use of that windowing, it's called, with that windowing approach to create value. And then on the bonus content side, obviously, you might have special guests that you only, release to premium subscribers. You might, AMAs are really popular, Ask Me Anything episodes. So that's where people can feel a closer connection to you as, kind of the host and the influencer in their life, by giving them access to ask you questions. So on Supercast, we actually provide a page where if you offer an AMA, members can come in and type in questions, and they can, upvote other people's questions. And then you as the creator, once every couple of weeks or however often you choose to do it, you just come in and choose which answers you want to answer, and then record an episode answering 3 to 5 questions. And then that episode goes out to everybody on your premium feed, as well as emailing out the people that, upvoted or asked that particular question. So, those are just a few other examples of, bonus content. People also send out newsletters. You can, write emails from within Supercast to premium subscribers. And they also do things like communities. So, like a private Facebook group or a private Slack group. You can, kind of give access to those sorts of things so that people can, meet each other as well as, right. Getting access to you.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So, okay. So you explain all the different things. Is that what you call layering? I see that is that the what you call, layering of the income streams?
Yeah, certainly. I guess there's just several forms of layering, but certainly, 2 revenue streams are better than 1. 3 revenue streams are better than 2.
Right.
So, if you already have ad revenue, then you can layer subscription revenue on top, and it works beautifully. It doesn't have to be one or the other. You don't have to turn off ads to do subscription.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. So you've given us some nuggets to use in our podcasting, but tell us specifically a podcaster specifically how Supercast can help them, earn revenue and other things.
Yeah. So the way we think about it is that if you have an existing audience, what we can do is help you set up that premium subscription on Supercast that allows you to convert a certain proportion of your audience over to being monthly subscribers. We also do, one-time kind of purchases. Say you want to get, $20 one time for, a set number of episodes. That's possible as well. But the vast majority of our creators are doing monthly subscriptions. It revolves around the question, what if 5% of your audience paid you $10 a month? That's kind of like the key question that centers the way we think about the premium subscription. And so that means 95% of your audience will continue to try out your podcast, maybe listening for the first time. Or maybe they just, can't afford a monthly subscription. That's totally fine. And you want to keep most of it free so that you can continue to grow your audience. But the 5% that's paying you $10 a month, let's say you had 1,000 listeners, that's 50 premium subscribers, if you convert 5%, $500 a month, $6,000 a year, not too bad.
Mm-hmm.
If you had 10,000 listeners, that's $60,000 a year. Which, for most creators, that gives you options, especially because, again, layering revenue on top of whatever else you're getting, that ability to create, $60,000 in revenue means that you can, reinvest that into hiring someone else to do, help you out with the editing, or to help you do video, or to do, more of the kind of like logistical stuff, so that you can focus on creating more content, or just communicating with your premium subscribers. There's lots of different ways that people are kind of tackling this, but essentially what Supercast does is we make it really easy to come and set up this program. And so all you have to do is basically, come to Supercast. It's free to sign up, and we only make money when you as the creator are making money. So what we charge is, a flat 59-cent fee per subscriber per month. And so really, there's no risk. You come up and sign up free account. You create your plans on your sign up page that listeners will see. And then you put the link to that sign up page in your show notes. So you do a little read on your show, letting people know that, hey, you're introducing Tools of the Podcast Trade Premium or Tools of the Podcast Trade Plus, and that, if you're interested, you can pay $5 a month to get access to, ad-free listening, bonus episodes, and so on, and to click the link in the show notes. And then that link takes you through to the Supercast page where people can, again, they can Apple Pay, they can Google Pay, they can pay with a credit card after they choose their plan, and then add it into their podcast player of choice. And then from that point onwards, they've got their private feed loaded into their podcast player. So anything that you upload to Supercast for your premium subscribers gets automatically sent out, to all of the people that are in that paying user base.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I love that. That sounds really beneficial to us as podcasters. And how is that? Is that different or similar to the Apple Podcast? Is that the Apple Podcast subscription model? Is that, because we're going to, podcasters are going to get notification about that if they haven't already. Yeah. So how does that relate to you, to Supercast?
Great question. So, Apple in creating the Apple Podcast subscription platform, they have basically set it in a similar way to the App Store. In that, like number one, they're charging 30% fees, to people on their first year, which, that's a lot on a $10 subscription. That's $3, like
$3,
versus
yeah.
59-cent fee, like the Supercast takes. So a lot of creators, feel like that's too high. That's, pretty egregious, but nevertheless it is what it is. So, they charge that as a fee, but, the bigger thing that I would say about Apple Podcasts is it's only available to the listeners that you have in your audience that use Apple Podcasts as a player.
Okay.
So
right.
I mean, for this podcast, do you know what proportion of your audience uses Apple Podcasts?
I don't, but I think it's the lesser amount.
Right.
Yeah.
So typically it's, industry-wide, it's typically 60%.
Yeah.
So, sure, 60% is, in some cases the majority, but what that means is that if you were to say, hey, I've now got Tools of Podcast Trade Premium, 40% of your audience will hear that and they'll be like, where's the button? I don't see a button to pay. I don't see a button to subscribe. And it's because they're not using Apple Podcasts. They're using Pocket Casts, or they're using Spotify, or they're using, they're on Android, so they don't even have the opportunity to download podcasts. So it just means you're leaving money on the table and confusing listeners because they don't use Apple Podcasts. So that's, one big issue. And then the other thing is that it's just really restrictive in terms of who owns the customer. So Apple owns the customer. Apple owns the subscriber. You actually never even know who your subscribers are. You don't get their names and you don't get their email addresses. If you were to stop using the platform, that's your revenue gone. You are not in control when it comes to owning those subscribers and subscriber payments. Whereas the Supercast model is really to help you build your own castle. So when we get you to sign up for Supercast, we also get you to connect or create your own Stripe account. So Stripe is an online payment platform that's, by far and away the number one, trusted payment platform for processing credit cards and subscriptions and things. And so the name of the Stripe account that you would set up when you're starting out with Supercast is actually in your name. It's your account. Think of it as your own bank account that you created. Payments flowing into your account directly, and we just take our fee, on the way through. And you're also the owner, of all the email addresses and the subscribers. So you can export them. You can connect it to a MailChimp or, wherever you want, we really support you and empower you with the ability to build the subscription that's right for your audience. And where even if you were to, heaven forbid, stop using Supercast in a year's time, you could disconnect your Stripe account and you would still get paid, and subscribers would go with you, wherever you want to take them, where there's no lock-in with Supercast.
Yeah, thank you for explaining that, because the whole idea of having this subscription is to connect with your audience and for them to connect with you. Right. So if there's a wall up, then, it defeats that purpose, even Absolutely. If you're making a little change on the side. Okay. All right. Thank you for doing that. What is Jason grateful for today?
Wow. Jason is grateful for the opportunity to just work with amazing people. I think the thing that drives me is really helping teams grow together in a number of different ways. So obviously I'm building a team at Supercast, working on this platform. We are all growing together, as a team, as we discover, what things we want to build in the future for the podcasting world. But it's also working with lots of creators, everyone that approaches Supercast, everyone that wants to use Supercast. We dive into the weeds with them on what should my subscription program look like? How much should I price it for? How do I launch it? We really love to get involved and really like to partner with them on helping them build their business. It's a complicated thing, and it requires a lot of
Yes.
careful thought. And everybody is quite rightly protective about their audience. Everyone wants not to take their audience for granted. So we're really fortunate to be able to work with some really, really high caliber creators. And then also the opportunity to speak with you, and speak with other people about where we would like to see kind of creators go and how we can contribute to just a thriving podcast ecosystem.
Yes, for sure. All right, thank you. And how can we get in touch with you and connect with you and try out Supercast?
Yeah, so the Supercast website is at supercast.com. We're also on Twitter at Supercast, or I'm personally on Twitter at jsuhoy, JSEWHOY. And yeah, my DMs are open. So if anybody has any queries, feel free to get in touch.
Okay, thank you. And any parting shots to podcasters?
Yeah, I would say, just keep doing what you're doing. Podcasters contribute so much value to the world. When you come and tell your story, a lot of people are doing that, really out of wanting to contribute to the world. And it's unfortunate in some ways that, podcasting has started out, with this idea that podcasts are free, and you have to do it as a hobby project. And you just, everyone says consistency, just keep plugging away, just keep releasing the episodes, you'll get there. It won't happen overnight, but maybe in 3 years, it's a message of, just keep your heads down and keep doing the work. There for sure is an element of truth to that in terms of discovering your voice, settling into a niche, discovering your audience, giving you time for your audience to listen. But I think personally, that there is a big disconnect between the value that podcasters give to their listeners in terms of the hundreds of hours of listening, that they can get.
Yes.
And then how much they're paying, which is zero in most cases,
Yes.
And so, I imagine a world where we close that gap some, through things like direct listener subscriptions, which in turn means that, you as creators have more resources to be able to reinvest back into your show, or just kind of have a balanced kind of business, and that's what I mean by being motivated to see this ecosystem just function in a more vibrant and healthy way.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Very good. Thank you, Jason Suhoy, for coming and talking to us today. I really appreciate you.
Thanks, Jen. It was a pleasure.
Yeah.